Very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to your favorite news destination. You're watching In Your Interest with me, Kabir Naqvi, and on the segment tonight, we're zeroing in on a brewing storm in the United States and India relations that's hitting where it hurts. We're talking about visas, jobs, and of course the shifting geopolitical alliances. Is Uncle Sam tightening the screws as a pressure tactic over tariffs, or is it about pulling India out of the China-Russia orbit? Well, brace for bottlenecks as the Trump administration clamps down on visa rules yet again. And let's cut straight to the chase. India, holder of the maximum H-1B visas, will feel the squeeze the hardest. Non-immigrant visa applicants, from business travelers to tech pros, must now attend interviews exclusively at one of the 5 US embassy or consulates in India. No more hopping to third countries for a quicker processing. This ends a long-standing practice that helped bypass massive backlogs, now stretching up to 9 months or more in some cases. Visa types like B1, B2 for business and tourism, H1B for the skilled workers, we're talking about F1 for students, L1 for intra-company transfers, and O1 for extraordinary talent are all under heightened scrutiny now. Gone are the most Dropbox renewals and age-based exemptions, forcing in-person appearances even for the routinest of cases. And this comes amidst the tighter immigration rules under Donald Trump 2.0, with increased backlog disrupting business, tourism, and urgent travel. The IT and outsourcing sectors, India's economic backbone, they're facing major disruptions as companies are now scrambling with the delayed talent flows and revoked approvals. Fueling the fire are recent comments from Donald Trump's administration and the heavyweights and influencers and the right-wing supporters, painting a stark anti-immigration picture, and what's more is that signaling and singling out India. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis calls the H-1B visa program a scam that displaces young Americans. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick echoes, saying hiring Americans should be the priority, and it's not just official. American right-wing influencers are also singling out Indians. Folks, there is a clear-cut paradox here. Indian origin CEOs run Google. Indian origin CEOs run Microsoft, Adobe, IBM, and nearly 10% of the Fortune 500 companies. They're driving American innovation. Well, food for thought, isn't it? Meanwhile, Indian students in the United States are particularly feeling the heat in this charged-up atmosphere with rising racism on campuses and the hate campaigns online. Over 4,700 plus student visas have been revoked for issues like irregular attendance or unauthorized employment. Some could be genuine cases. Let's not say all of them are absolutely fake and are singling out Indians. But workplace inspections and raids, just like at the Hyundai crackdown, these are all red flags, especially for Indians, leading to layoffs of student workers and forcing many into shared housing amidst this financial pressures that have come about. Experts are warning that even skilled professionals, those that stay back for that opted extra studying courses, are no longer immune, with self-funded students now the most vulnerable in this uncertain future. And the big question, and we've got an informed panelist with us on tonight, the big question that we're asking today: is America weaponizing visa rules to pressure India on tariffs and foreign relations, something that we've been decoding for the longest time? And will Indian talent now look westward or pivot to new pastures like Europe, Australia, or even the East? Let's decode all of that. With us on the broadcast, Adit Kothari, foreign affairs and geopolitical expert, joining us live from London. Ravi Lotumala, career counselor and college admissions expert, joining us live from Texas, somebody who's been doing this for the better part of more than 2 decades, if I'm not wrong. Mr. Ravi, many thanks for joining us here on the broadcast. Ambassador Das Gupta is soon going to be with us, and Irina Sukerman, journalist, lawyer, and foreign policy expert, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Irina, always a pleasure to have you with us on News 9. You know, Mr. Lothumala, you've been doing this for the longest time. Let me quickly get things started with you specifically. And let's talk about the student and the industry angle, because many are also saying that not all Indians go out there to study, to, upskill themselves. Many are just trying to live the American dream. Many are privileged enough to go there, somehow get a green card, and then envisage a life for themselves. Not everybody is looking to make the big bucks or, are pro technicians in their respective fields. So my first question, and we've detailed all of that out in the introduction, India supplies nearly 75% of the H-1B talent. with these new restrictions of you not being able to hop to a third country just to make processing quicker. We will touch upon the tariff aspect. We will touch upon how Donald Trump has been constantly arm twisting India when it comes to the strategic ties between these two countries. But this new move, given each day we're learning new things about the visa process, how disruptive could these restrictions be specifically for the IT, for outsourcing and the startup ecosystem? And of course, talk to us from the point of view of a student as well.
So, Kabir, you have brought up a very good issue, which is ongoing critical issues. Let me just tell you that this was expected and this came up. If you introspect sitting in the United States, there was a major rehaul that was supposed to happen, and it happened only in the Trump's administration. There is a lot of cleanup that was required. Lot of cleanup required not only at a very basic level called admissions, students, agents, universities, so many things, lot of cleanup was required. So imagine when I say cleanup was required, there was a lot of dirt piled up on this entire ecosystem. So the good were being impacted and the bad were taking the advantage of it. Good were students coming in from India into very good schools, very ranked schools, and they are studious and hardworking and experienced, and all those people were being very much impacted. And the other side of the guys were taking undue advantage, doing all unethical practices in the United States. This was haunting more. And it was haunting to such an extent that even they were displacing the local Americans who were looking for jobs. I mean, for instance, for example, a student coming from India and with 0 years of experience, when he's applying for a job, he's putting an experience of 8 to 10 years, and somebody is taking up the interviews compared to them. Whereas US kids born in US, if they have only 6 months of experience, they put only 6 months of experience. It is a very simple and easy way of filtering out all these things that were coming into the picture limelight. And that was the reason these are all the things that happened, happening for the last 4 to 5 years now. Not just 4 to 5 years now. Now, there was a research done by Alexander Fay, and then he completely discussed detailed with the data and all the things about the H-1B program, and they came up with the information that this was not used properly, but it was abused and misused, and drastically. And so this was required, and this is, trust me, and this is only a temporary things, all the things. Once the cleanup is done, again, everything comes into place, everything falls into place, and then quality students will always have a preference over the students that are not working very hard.
So what you're essentially telling us, Mr. Lothumala, is that there was actually a problem that had to be fixed. There was a problem, and I think that's a right way of putting it, that this wasn't used properly but was abused drastically. And we will stick on that because Irina Sukuman, journalist, lawyer and foreign policy expert, with us live from Washington. Irina, help the viewers understand. We will come back to the students in just a quick bit. Exercise brevity if you can. From Washington's perspective, what's really driving these new visa restrictions? Because like Mr. Ravi Lothumala pointed out, there were some problems. There was a little bit of tightening of the structure and system that was needed. But are these genuine security concerns? Or is this political signaling ahead of the midterms? Because a lot of right-wing influencers are now jumping the bandwagon, towing the Donald Trump line. Or is this pure economic protectionism, which is where the India-US ties also come into play?
Thank you for asking this question. I would say it's a mixture of all of these things. There's no doubt there is always abuse in any system, and there was worker visa fraud, there was student visa fraud. People were paying off, unqualified people from around the world were paying off to buy up visas to get into the country, and of course it was creating a backlog. But at the same time, the situation with the abuses of the working visas is more complicated than that. It is true that in some sectors there was fraud that displaced American workers, and in such cases I would certainly urge the government to investigate that fraud and use normal law enforcement mechanisms against it. But on the other hand, there are sectors of US economy that are suffering from skills gap, and keeping out qualified workers when they're in the cases where there aren't enough qualified American workers actually is a huge economic drain. It's protectionist, and it undercuts the Trump administration's goals in bringing manufacturing back to the United States. With the case of the bans on short-term visa applications from third countries, this is not simply a case of anti-Indian bias, because it is applied to other countries as well, but it may affect Indians disproportionately. So from the point of view of the US State Department, this measure is helpful because visa screening relies heavily on local vetting infrastructure and institutional memory. When applicants apply via their home country, consular officers can easily access national data on identity, criminal records, or past visa violations, so it makes the process easier for them. Also, enforcing interviews and immigration standards is becoming more feasible when they're at home. Abroad, you can have long backlogs and proliferation.
But
of
Irina,
country
you
appointments.
do understand why the Indian students are, they're in uncertain waters right now. Like you pointed out, it might just disproportionately affect Indians the most. And you think Howard Lutnick does not know that? Peter Navarro is oblivious to that fact? I'm sure they know about that as well.
Of course.
They do. I'm going to come back to you, Irina. I'm going to come back to you.
Mhm.
We have Ambassador Jayant Dasgupta, who's with us on the broadcast, former ambassador to WTO. Ambassador Dasgupta, many thanks for taking out the time. Let me quickly get to you. We have been talking about the students specifically. Irina here of the opinion that this is not biased against India, but because 75% H-1Bs go to Indians, it might just disproportionately affect Indians the most. And Mr. Ravi Lothumala, who's a career counselor, he's been doing this for the longest time now, says that yes, Indians are going to get affected. People are being thrown out due to those raids and checks that are happening. Take a look at the Hyundai example very recently. Those are all red flags for our H-1B skilled workers. But is this more than that? Mr. Lothumala also says that there was actually a problem that needed fixing. So my question to you, how do you interpret Washington's latest decision to end these third country visa applications, specifically for Indians? We're looking at this from the Indian POV because does this reflect a policy shift? We've been talking about the midterm polls that are right around the corner. Is this political signaling or is this economic protectionism? Because you're specifically targeting India, or is there a broader tightening that was actually needed? Where do you stand, on the fence or either side? Ambassador, over to you.
Well, there are a few points which I would like to mention. First is that granting a visa is the prerogative of the country which is going to have the person from the other country come in.
Yep.
So it has to do a background check. It has to satisfy itself that the person, for the purpose which he has or she has mentioned in the application, will actually perform that function or carry on with that function. Now the problem is that since July 2025 and after the COVID pandemic, in fact, the US had reduced the number of people who were working in their visa section in India, and that led to very long dates for getting an interview. And now at the moment, of course, it has come down a bit, but it is still between 3.5 months to about 9 months, depending on the place where you put in your application. So that is one thing which is coming down, but very slowly. So the number of people who are screening the visas, that if that could be increased by making India making a request to the US, that is one possibility. The second point I wanted to mention is that because of the intense screening and the social media, scrutiny, etc., about 50% of the visas from Indians are getting rejected now. So that is a second thing, which I think is across the board because the US is doing it all over the world.
Okay.
The third point is that as far as students are concerned, in all the good universities of the US, the admissions close by about December and a person is notified that you are either admitted or not admitted. And in some laggard universities or other universities, it carries on till about February, at the most March. So I think if somebody has got an admission in December, he or she has time till August or to get a visa, and he or she could have easily got it even in the present dispensation. Even for the other universities, it is possible to get it from one or the other centers in India. And the last point I wanted to mention is that it is not directed against India, but it is basically a part of President Trump's policies of restricting visas, of restricting people coming into the US so that jobs could be available, more jobs could be available to the US citizens.
I agree with you, Ambassador, but doesn't the Trump administration at the same point in time know that 75% of the H-1Bs go to the Indians? I mean, this year itself, the intake has been horrible and we're still looking at 3.31 lakh Indian students in the United States.
Well, H-1B visa is a different cup of tea from the number of students in the US, because they would be going either under an F visa or an M visa. F visa for a full-time enrollment in a university, and M visa for a vocational course, etc. And H-1B is something which is given, and the quota is 65,000 per annum, and another 20,000 additional for a person having a master's degree or higher degree from a US university. So overall it is 85,000 visas per annum, and people who have already gone to the US earlier under an H-1B visa, if they want an extension after 3 years, their numbers are not counted in this 85,000. So out of this 85,000, 75%, I don't know whether that is correct or not, but it is true that more than 50% of the visas go to Indians.
All right. Adit Kothari, foreign affairs and geopolitical expert, joining us live from London here. Adit, what is your opinion on these new developments? And vis-a-vis, we'll also play out that graphic, because there is a strong rhetoric that is now gaining momentum coming from the right-wing influencers, people who have a lot of backing on social media, right from Ron DeSantis to Peter Navarro to Howard Lutnick, and now you've got the Fox show, news host coming out and saying that, how about let's see Prime Minister Modi go and crack a deal with Xi Jinping. Let's see how that works out for him. Then you've got Charlie Kirk. He runs an NGO called, Turning Points USA. He's come out with his own statement. And these are people who actually influence the motive and the opinion on the people on the ground. And the MAGA supporters are rallying behind them. So it is uncertain waters for Indian students. But the rest of the panel essentially saying that let's not make too much of a hue and cry about this new visa development, because this is not signaling or singling out Indians particularly. It's just pure coincidence that so many Indians apply for these visas and are going to get affected. But this is a tightening of screws that's happened across the board.
True. I think Indians are going to be the first casualty in the grand scheme of things, primarily because we are one of the highest recipients of the H-1B visa. If you've heard the three other panelists, say what they have said, the summary that we can draw out from that is that the State Department is basically aiming at creating a much more controlled, a much more secure, and a much more domestically focused system in place. And the eventual casualty of this is going to be those Indians who are trying to apply for either tourist visas, business visas, or even student visas, or even the H-1B visas. We've got to remember that this third country application came into existence only during the COVID period, and it was only done to ensure that the consulates in India, specifically Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, Delhi, were not sort of overburdened as a consequence of those numbers of applications flying in from India, because India does apply a lot for these visas. And then eventually, if you look at countries like Thailand, UAE, or Germany, which has lesser number of applicants, it was done to essentially balance out that sort of applications. Now they're basically going into the pre-2020 norm. But the root cause of all of this is domestic politics. The domestic politics is basically looking at driving out that sort of narrative that Indians are coming and taking away your jobs which you are not qualified to do, but yet the Indians are taking away those jobs, and which is why we are tightening the screws to ensure that Indians do not get that sort of priority in our sort of country, and we can create mechanisms to ensure that they can be deterred. It's a very myopic and a very inward-looking policy that the Trump administration is basically looking at. And as a consequence, they're basically encouraging more sort of multipolarity to come into existence. I mean, the more inward you become as a country, the consequences, the other countries start conjuring up more sort of collaboration and corroboration between themselves, and that is what is going to happen. The decision around the tighter controls is typically driven because of this report that was presented by the US State Department, that 7.5% of these visas which were granted last year were basically overstays, which is why we sort of need to tighten those controls. Kabir.
All right, a pertinent point that you've raised over here. My follow-up going to come to you right at the end of this discussion. Let me quickly cut across to Irina Sukuman. Irina, how significant is the role of conservative media? Because before we get back to students and what they can now do, Ravi Lothumala and the ambassador with us, we'll educate the viewers as to what all possible remedies are there at their disposal. But again, talking about this far-right rhetoric that's now taking shape and gaining pace as well. How significant is the role of the conservative media and influencers in shaping Trump's visa policies? I did mention the Fox show host and, of course, Charlie Kirk. Those are two people that are followed profusely by the MAGA supporters, let alone Americans, particularly their repeated targeting of Indians. They've singled out, quote-unquote, call centers as well, Irina.
If Trump's motivation in all of this is purely technical, in other words, the tightening of the screws, fraud prevention, and economic and fulfillment of his economic promises, this is not at all reflected in the conservative media, or especially the influencers like Charlie Kirk, who are focusing exclusively on the nativist, anti-immigration element and have even engaged in racist or borderline racist
Is the impact
rhetoric.
real, Irina? Is the impact real? And is it vitiating the atmosphere, let's say in college campuses or places where immigrants are working?
I think it is creating a backlash, and it's helping sell these policies to the public in a way that is not necessary. I'm sure there are many people concerned about the fraud issue, of course, but that's not the emphasis of these individuals. The emphasis is, oh, we don't need more Indians here in general. Not to say, well, we've had abusive practices and we need to make sure that America's citizens get the priority, but it's creating an economic cycle that's damaging to the U.S. because as fewer people are coming to the country with skills, the economy is slowing down, the jobs become less available, and as a result, there is going to be more competition for those jobs. And part of the impact is also the tariffs that are being placed. Yes, of course, they're damaging to India and they're damaging the relationship, but they're also damaging to the U.S. And this creates a cycle where the administration now has to keep justifying increasing immigration crackdowns as a way to offset the economic impact on employment on the labor market, but at the same time it is also creating fewer opportunities by way of narrowing the numbers of skilled workers that can develop growing sectors. So it becomes a very negative economic cycle as a result of these policies, and these influencers are not commenting on this process. In fact, they're doing everything possible to justify and to create a very negative backlash.
All right.
And they're creating sentiments, spreading very anti-Indian sentiments for no reason, has nothing to do which has nothing to do with specific cases of fraud. It has to do with this racism that they're promoting.
So they're promoting racism, there's backlash on social media, and they are vitiating the atmosphere for they're fueling the anti-India sentiment. Again, coming back to the students, Ravi Lothumala, completely running out of time here. Help the students that are watching this episode. What is it that they can do? Ambassador has already told us there is ample time. If you got an admission in December, there's ample time for you to prepare for it. Apart from that, what are some salient 3-4 points that they should keep in mind now vis-a-vis the new visa restrictions?
As Jayan sir has already mentioned in very clearly that visa is a privilege. It's not a right. You have to use it. We cannot abuse it. Follow the rules judiciously and understand what the rules are. You came for education, focus on education. You came for skilling up your knowledge, focus on that one. You came for internships, do that. You want to do a H1B, be genuine, be honest, be hardworking, and show your knowledge. If you follow all these things, I don't think so that anybody will discriminate against us. In a class of, if I say all the international dependent universities, if in a class of 100, close to 90 to 95% of them are from India and predominantly from the Telugu speaking states called Andhra and Telangana. So the campuses have to diversify in terms of exploring the talent, finding the niche talent and quality talent from across entire India. Not that nobody is talking about it. It is not just talent is only segregated to India and Andhra and Telangana. No, absolutely not. They have to invest their own knowledge, resources, etc. Now, if you look into some of the universities who have done campus representatives or India representatives, they're all from Telugu-speaking belt only. Like your Telugu-speaking guy is telling that I'm a university representative and going to another guy. So what are they going to ask right now? Hey, forget about all the things. How are the part-time jobs in the US? So they say that, oh, part-time jobs are available. Don't worry about it. You talk about the numbers. If you focus on numbers, quality is always not there at all. If you want to have a quality, you should have a diversity. You have across several thousands of universities across entire India, right from East Bengal to Gujarat and from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. Why only Andhra and Telangana, only two states? So
that's a pertinent point that you've raised over here, Mr. Lothumala. I think that message will go across to the larger audience that if you've decided to go there and study, really go there and upskill yourself. And there are so many other problems that have also come to light. Adit told us that this brings multipolarity onto the broad, negotiating table. Ambassador has already told us that, this is not being done against India. This is a privilege and not a right. But then again, the jury is still out whether this is being done genuinely for security concerns, whether this is being done for political signaling, or this is economic protectionism in these terrifying times. According to Irina Sukuman, it's a collection of all of it. But how much will Indians get impacted? That's the bigger question, which is why we continue to talk about this on In Your Interest. Completely run out of time here. Ambassador, Mr. Lothumala, Irina, and Adit Kothari, many thanks for joining us. Many thanks for watching. Top developments right on the other side. एसोसिएट स्पॉन्सर एंकर टूथपेस्ट, नए जमाने की नई सुरक्षा। ब्यूटीफुल।